Nashville. I'm with Teresa Thorne, and we are live on Facebook. I do a series that is called Where Are You From? And I invited Teresa over today. I'm wearing my really tacky sweater because it's Christmas and we're all in this, in the spirit. But I invited Teresa over today because she has just published a book. And if you're looking for a good Christmas gift, can I hold it up? I haven't read it. She's going to tell us what it's about, but it's a great option for a Christmas gift. Is it too late to order?
No, it's not too late to order.
Okay, and you can get it quickly and in the hands of
Sure.
friends and family. Okay, it's called House of Rhodes. I'm going to hold it to the camera. Hey, Stephen.
It's a Birmingham book, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's set in Birmingham.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so as you know, on Where Are You From, we ask people where they're from. So it's a coincidence that it's written by a Birmingham author, and it takes place in Birmingham. But this is not... this is part of a trilogy, right?
Right.
So the first of 3 books. So tell me about House of Rhodes and why is it set in Birmingham?
House of Rhodes is murder, mayhem, and a little magic in the Magic City.
Ooh. Written by a former police officer,
Yes.
so you know all about mayhem and murder.
That's right. In fact, I never liked that kind of book. I never liked reading that kind of book because it felt like work.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
With a career in the police department. But I kind of came full circle around to writing this again. As you know, I started writing with historical novels set in very ancient times in Turkey and in Israel.
Well, if you're going to bring it up, let's show that book.
Okay, so this was my first book, Noah's Wife, and yes, it's about Noah, or Noah's wife, but it's loosely based on the story of the flood. And the second book is Angels at the Gate.
I love the cover.
Thank you. My sister designed that cover. I'm very proud of that. The publisher loved it too.
Beautiful.
So this is about Lot's wife. And Lot in the biblical story was the woman that turned and looked.
And turned into salt.
And turned into a pillar of salt. But both of these women, Noah's wife and Lot's wife, had no name in the biblical story and only got one line each.
That probably didn't make them feel very significant.
Right. So these are, I had a wonderful time bringing these women to life. And it was several years of research and traveling to Turkey and to Israel. I was very fortunate.
So you didn't just make up their characters. You did a lot of research to define who they might have been, what they may have been like.
Their characters themselves, yes, that is part of my imagination. But the setting was very, heavily researched. And the time period, the culture. And I tried to make this a story based on what we know from scientific information. What the geology, what caused the Black Sea to flood in 5500 BC. It's a fascinating story. I don't want to dwell too much on it unless
you don't want to give it away.
No, I'll be happy to talk about it. There was a couple of geologists that were digging into
the bottom of the sea.
Thank you. I don't know why that escaped me. Yeah, they were doing soil samples of the bottom of the sea in the Mediterranean. When you pull those out and look at them, they're in layers. It's like a time capsule.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because they can look at what kind of marine life existed from one time period to another and what kind of earth is in there.
Yes.
And anyway, they ended up doing this kind of research in the Black Sea. And what they discovered was about 5500 BCE, the Black Sea changed from fresh lake to salt water suddenly. And they wrote a whole book on it called Noah's Flood. So that was the foundation of my research because that gave me a time period. And then I could look up, what archaeology has found about the time period. It is it, at this point, scientists can tell you basically what people had to eat for dinner, and so I built this story around that. They're not really religious books, even though they're based loosely on the biblical stories.
Now, there's another book you brought,
Yes.
besides The House of Rose, called Last Chance for Justice. And here it is. Oh, there's a little bit of glare. There you go. So tell me about this one.
All right. This book was, or is, the investigator's story of the 1963 Birmingham church bombing, the one that killed 4 little girls in Birmingham and changed civil rights history. And I was because I had a career in the police department, a person I knew very well ended up being one of the primary investigators in that case. And so that gave me access to the behind-the-scenes story of how this case was investigated and finally resolved. And the trials are in there also. But that was quite an honor to write.
And I felt honored that you put my name in there somewhere.
Yes, you are in there.
I covered the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing trials in 2001, I believe, and 2002. I may be off by a year. And feel like I got to the root of what made Birmingham, what defined Birmingham, not just in race relations, but how the city grew from that time period to become the city that it is today. So House of Rose is the book we're talking about. This is the new release. This is the hot, you've got to have it and read it book right now. Yes. And give us a little indication of what House of Rose is about.
Well, first of all, you had asked me how I got there.
Yes.
From ancient history.
Yes, yes.
And the Last Chance for Justice really...
More recent history.
It's more recent history, but I had to put on my police hat, or looking at things through that lens again. Mm-hmm. And that sort of led me back to wanting to write something about being in the police department.
Okay.
And being a police officer. So my main character, Rose, is a police officer.
So loosely based on your work at the police department, your character, or is it a combination of...
Sometimes.
I see that smile, that smile, maybe kind of.
Well, right. the thing is that Rose discovers she's a witch.
Really?
Yes. So
I wouldn't define you as a witch.
Yeah, so,
like the magical witch,
yes,
a
magical witch, but not your traditional type of witch. And I will explain that, but I do want to say that on my good days anyway, I'm not a witch.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the magic in this book, of course, Birmingham is the magic city.
Yes.
And that is based on the fact that the city grew at such a tremendous rate in the late 1800s because of the discovery of the 3 ores that are needed to make steel. And that is iron ore, coal, and limestone. And they all existed in proximity to each other, which allowed the city to mine and to make steel here. So in the magic city, there are 3 ancient houses: House of Rose, House of Stone, and House of Iron.
And do these houses really exist?
Well, of course they do. You think I would make that up? And there are witches and warlocks in the houses, and they get their magic each from one of those ores.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they have different types of powers. And Rose, and their powers come about late in life, so they're in their 20s.
I'm going to hold it here so everyone can see it.
All right. Before their powers manifest themselves. So Rose was a police officer in Birmingham. She was chasing a suspect down a dark alley, and her partner was driving his patrol car around the end of the alley to intercept the suspect when she had her first vision. And what she saw was the future a few moments ahead of where she was. And in that future, the suspect pulled out a gun and shot her partner.
Oh.
So she has to make a decision in a split second what to do. And she shoots the suspect in the back before he can do that. And then she's in
a heap of trouble.
A heap of trouble and a lot of chaos and mess and really the worst nightmare for a police officer to having shot somebody especially in the back, and then having to explain what's happened. And of course she doesn't know really, and so she has to discover who she is and what's going on.
Oh, wonderful. So it's in part, there's a bigger message here about knowing who you are as a person, and the process of discovery can take you through some muddy waters. It sounds like before you get out on the other end.
Absolutely.
On the other side. So that brings us to book 2 and 3 that you're probably already planning to write, or have you begun writing those?
Oh yeah, we're deep into all that.
Okay,
yeah.
so I can't go through this segment without asking you the key question that I ask everybody, because our accents sometimes will indicate where we're from. Yours I can hear a Southern accent, so I know I can narrow it down. And then I did sneak and ask you just before we started where you're actually from. Can anybody online, if you're watching, can you guess where Teresa's from? It's somewhere in the South. And if you can guess, just write it down in the comments section. So take a moment. Hey, Victor Brown, how you doing? And write down, where do you think our Birmingham author Teresa Thorne might be from originally? Any guesses? Where is Teresa from? Well, if you're busy working or you can't.
Somebody's going to say Salem, probably.
You think? That's right, because it's about witches.
Because of the witches.
I can't say. Hey, Robert. How you doing? So do we have no guesses on where Teresa is from? All right. Well, we might have to reveal where you are from, and then I also want you to tell me how you got to Birmingham.
Well, you ready for the big reveal?
The big reveal. Here it comes, folks.
Montgomery, Alabama.
Montgomery, Alabama. Well, that's not too far away.
Not too far away, but I have spent all of my adult life after college in Birmingham, or in the Birmingham area. So I consider myself truly from Birmingham.
Although Montgomery's full of history. Were you there as a baby only, or did you grow up there?
I was born there, and I grew up there. I was there until I went off to college. I am a definite Alabama girl. Born in Montgomery, went to school at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. And
I don't know if you're supposed to show your colors here. No, I'm just teasing. No, I mean politically, we don't want a fight going on. But here's the question that I have for you: how is it a nice girl from Montgomery becomes a police officer? Because if you were to have a lineup of women that I know that I would choose would go into the criminal investigated. Were you a criminal investigator, or were you just you were a cop?
I was a street cop on the beat, and then I became a detective, and I did that for many years. And I ended up, after the end of my career, I was a captain in the North Precinct.
Oh wow, so you've held some really impressive roles. But you don't seem like, you just seem way too polite and
I don't seem like a witch.
Gentle. Either, no, you do not seem like a witch at all. So how did that happen? You have to share with me the story.
Well, it's even worse than you think, because I'm a Jewish girl, and Jewish girls in the South do not become police officers.
Well, I don't think there are many Jewish girls in the South. Period. You probably count them in a small room.
Not too many. And back when I started, of course, there were really very few women around. But I became a police officer by accident.
Really?
Although I will say that for a long time in my life, I wanted to be an astronaut. So I did want to do adventures as a youth,
as a young woman.
As a young woman, but in fact, that's how I ended up. That's the root story of how I ended up as a police officer. I wanted to be an astronaut. My father sat me down one day when I was about 10 years old because I'd written a letter to NASA asking them what courses I needed to take in college to be an astronaut.
Oh, how cool is that?
I was very serious. At that time, of course, only Air Force fighter test jet pilots were astronauts, but I didn't know that. And my father sat me down and told me I couldn't be an astronaut.
Oh.
I was so crushed
Oh.
and disappointed. It turns out that when he went into the Navy, he had wanted to be a pilot. And they told him he couldn't because of his eyesight. And that's what he told me, was my eyesight was too bad.
Was that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially
Okay.
at the time. You know, nowadays, perhaps not. But in any case, so I was very disappointed. My mother tried to encourage me and say, you know, honey, you can still be in science and help people go up into space. And I thought that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because that was not what I wanted to do, is watching other people get
Right,
to
you
go
wanted
up.
to be the
I
player
wanted
in
to
the
be
game
the one to go up.
and not a spectator.
Right. So I didn't know what to do with myself. And I ended up, by the time I went to college, I chose social work because I did like to help people.
Okay.
So that was my...
That was your entree?
That was my degree. I got a master's in social work from the University of Alabama. I ended up writing a paper on a police social work project here in Birmingham. And I was living in Hoover at the time. So having a project that was here was kind of what got me interested in it. And when I also did my internship on that program. So I was a little college graduate riding around in a police car. Those were interesting days. But the chief at that time, James Parsons, read the paper I wrote and asked me to be a grant writer in the police department.
Okay, that sounds like a safe job. That
Yeah.
your mom and dad must have been
Sure,
go
that
for
was right.
it.
There was no problem. But the thing was, the first thing I wrote a grant about was computer-aided dispatching. And at that time, back in the dark ages, they didn't have any computers in City Hall.
Oh my God, that is the dark ages.
Yeah. So, and I knew nothing about that, nor about dispatching, or what the officers needed, and how we needed to write this grant.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to ride with the officers in order to figure out what it was like for them in a patrol car, and I learned, that what did they need to know? If they were coming up on an address, it was important for them to know what had happened there before. Was anybody there armed? What to expect would be, a very advantageous thing to know about.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I did that for about a year and a half, and I wrote grants, and then I decided that it was much more interesting to be riding in the patrol car.
That little sense of adventure emerged again,
yes.
and you couldn't be shooting yourself to the moon or be in Huntsville on your way to space travel, but you could have some adventure in a patrol car.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So I worked my way from the top to the bottom. And I started over as a police officer in the police academy. And that's how it happened.
Were you one of the first women to go through?
I think I was probably, I call it the third wave. The first wave was like 2 people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then there were several women that came before me. And women were rare,
mm-hmm.
but we were there.
And did they give you a desk job, or did they let you actually go out and patrol?
I was on patrol.
Were you ever shot at?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I was involved in the perimeter of a very sad situation. It was a hostage situation one night where a man who was having flashbacks to the Vietnam War had shot and killed. I can't remember if it was his wife or his wife's sister. But I think it was maybe his wife, and he was holding his wife's sister hostage. And we were set up in the perimeter. But he ended up coming out and firing his gun at night. And I was right across the street from him, and I almost fired back, but he went down so fast because there were two other officers on each corner of the house that took him down. Mm. And we didn't learn until later that he had actually fired into the ground, because you couldn't tell that at night. All you could see was, we knew he was armed, of course, and we could see the blast of the light of the gun. So when we learned about all that later, and it turned out they call that death by police. It's a suicide, really. He knew he was going to be shot.
He just didn't want to do it himself, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that is
so that was sad, but that was really the only time that I can remember I was actually shot at, sort of.
I'm Donna Francavilla, and you're watching Where Are You From? It's a little live Facebook Live series that I do, and I try to find interesting people. I've asked Teresa Thorne to come by. She's a Birmingham author, and as you can hear, a former police officer. Just has some great stories, some great insight into Birmingham and overseas. She's well-traveled. She's written multiple books. Even though I'm wearing my really obnoxious, can you see it? This is like the best ugly sweater
I think
they make.
Oh,
Look at
great.
that. She's still, she hasn't asked me to change. That's a really good sign.
I've never tried to change you, Donna.
So you have, thank you. The book that you can buy is called House of Rhodes. You can also buy her other books, right? These are still available.
They're all available.
I'll never forget the first time I walked into a bookstore and saw these, and I was so proud to know you. This is Noah's Wife and Angels at the Gate, which you can buy if you know somebody who's hard to buy for but loves books. These are terrific books to get. And then Last Chance for Justice is another one. And I knew Teresa. We met when she was in the process of writing that book, having a realistic look at what happened during the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing and how that investigation got underway. And the book that she is most recently published is called House of Rose, and it's the first of 3, a trilogy, and it should be quite interesting. Set in Birmingham, set in the Magic City. It has an element of magic to it, and an element of crime and some drama, I imagine, and some conflict. Oh, yeah. How do we get the book? Where do we find it?
Well, I always try to promote bookstores. I know that Little Professor has the books, and Read Books will have.
Awesome. And how much is the book retailing for? You have to look this up, don't you? Okay.
$16.95.
Okay, $16.95. Is it also available on Amazon.com or
absolutely? Yes. Like I said, I like to support bookstores, and if you go to a bookstore and it's not there, or if you check and it's not, you can always order them through your bookstore. But they also are available on all the online sites, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Kobo Books. And the 2 historical novels about Lot's wife and Noah's wife, Angels at the Gate and Noah's Wife, are also audiobooks. I love audiobooks.
Oh, did you read them?
No, I did not read them. I decided that it was stretching it a bit to have a Southern accent.
When you're supposed to be
from thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
So they're professionally read.
Oh, cool. And how about this Last Chance for Justice? Is this a book that's in libraries and
it should be.
Civil Rights Institute and some other places like that?
And all of the books are available as digital books for your e-readers also.
Awesome.
Including that one. This one just came out in paperback. It's available as a hardback or paperback too. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming by, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate you tuning in to learn more about Teresa, and now we know where she's from.
That's right.
Montgomery, Alabama.
Thanks again.